You're listening to In Sickness, a podcast about caregiving with Allison Breininger and Justin Bima.
Good morning, Justin.
Morning, Allison. How are you doing today?
You know, at this moment, I'm doing all right. We have surgery tomorrow, or Sean has a new spot in his gums.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one of these weird, it's outpatient and it's like minor, but still it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it's in the big hospital. Like all of his other ones have been sort of like at a suburb hospital.
Right.
So it's the big hospital where all the surgeries have happened, and they're probably going to have to take a tooth out. And it's also one of those that they'll know more once they go in, like how extensive it is. So it's just a whole thing. So it feels weird because it's like minor, but is it ever minor? You know what I mean? Like
right.
for anybody else, this would be major, but for us, like in comparison, it's minor, but it's still a big deal.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's going on. And then we just have had the animals continue to be a thing. Like Winston's paw continues to be a thing. And then one of the cats needed dental surgery this week. And so it's been a week of like, there are a lot of creatures in this house.
Yeah.
And it doesn't usually feel like that. Like, so we have one dog, two cats, and usually it's just like, it's fine.
They just exist around you. It's not like
exactly.
You're not a caregiver for them.
Right.
Yeah.
But this week I have definitely been a caregiver for two of the animals. And I'm like, friends, we don't, nope.
Yeah.
And we are like zooming towards the end of my daughter's like high school career.
Oh, yeah.
So like honors night this week, and then last day of school next week, and then graduation, then graduation party. And she started to like clean out her room.
Oh.
I mean, she has all summer, but still. And so it's all becoming really real.
Yeah.
Really real. So even like when I think about things, like somebody said something about the fall, and I'm like, in the fall, she won't be here.
Yeah.
I mean, she's going to be 20 minutes away. Right.
Right.
But it's sort of like this minor surgery thing, right? Like just because it could be worse. Like she could be like going to college in New Zealand. Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not hard.
Yeah, for sure.
So, so anyway, that's going on. It's also just like gorgeously beautiful here. And I'm just out at digging in the garden all the time.
Great. I love that for you.
It makes me so happy.
Good.
So happy. So I think I would say overall good.
Okay. We'll take it.
Yeah. Right. We'll take it. I'm going to make a quick plug for any listeners who are in the Twin Cities area that on June 1st, Saturday, June 1st, we are having a conference for caregivers that I have been carefully planning, lovingly planning, and I'm so excited about. So you can go to caregivercon.com and then look, there's a link. So this little one we're doing is called CaregiverCon X, sort of like TEDx. So you can find the spot on there about CaregiverCon X, and then you'll find all the information. And then in November, we're doing a big one that's going to be called CaregiverCon.
Nice.
But anyway, just for any listeners who are in the Twin Cities or, are interested in coming to the Twin Cities for that half day thing, come on over.
Nice.
So, yeah. How the heck are you?
Oh, boy. Yeah, I know that for a while it's been, things have been good. Things have been normal. Things have been steady. We've had a whirlwind of the last few weeks. It has been a journey.
Tell me.
So let's see. This all kicked off it'll be 3 weeks ago from tomorrow that this all started.
Okay.
I was cooking dinner. I was just starting to cook dinner. And Sarah came in and she was on the phone and she motioned for me to follow her. So I turned the stove off, follow her. And she's talking to her primary care provider on the phone. And she's like, can you hop on a telemedicine visit in, 5 minutes? And this is like 5:30 at night.
Yeah.
So their office is closed.
Right.
And so Sarah had an ultrasound for something on Friday. And based on how that went with the tech in the room, everything seemed, there was nothing that seemed alarming.
Sure.
And 5 minutes before Sarah got this call, she had got the results back for that. And she hadn't really had time to process them. But that quickly, she got that call.
Yeah.
So we get on the telemed visit and the ultrasound found a 18 centimeter mass attached to one of her ovaries, which is large and was something completely unexpected.
Okay.
And her doctor was like very concerned.
Yeah.
Like, let's set the wheels in motion. She was putting in a order for an MRI.
Yeah.
And I'm referring you to the UW, which is in Seattle, like 2 hours away, which felt really like a big deal that we were being referred to like a higher level of care.
Yeah.
And I didn't finish cooking dinner that night.
Yeah, I'm sure you did not.
We were just kind of left like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Because this has not been, things like this are not things that we have had to deal with.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a slow, getting her diagnosed was a process. Like there haven't been like these out of the blue, what is happening situations.
Right.
So that was a whirlwind. That was just, and yeah, we were just like, well, obviously the concern is cancer.
Right.
And so we were just kind of left with like, well, yeah, what is happening? Where do we go from here? Like, what is this going to turn into?
Yeah.
What is our next whatever phase going to look like?
Yeah. What were the two of you in that moment? Like, what, you hang up from that telemedicine visit with this new information.
Yeah.
It's one of those like before this and after this moments in your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
A line was drawn in the sand,
mm-hmm.
right? In that moment, like, what did you two feel like in that moment?
For me, I just felt like, I think shock, overwhelm, like it didn't hit yet.
Yeah.
It was too much, just like trying to take it all in.
Yeah.
But also scared, I think too. Like this could be a serious thing. Like that is a large mass. Like, and we don't know at this point what it is. So we called the next morning to schedule the MRI because by the time we had that call the day before, their office was closed for scheduling. So they were like, oh, we see that this is kind of a rush order.
Yeah.
We can get you in this afternoon.
Oh, great.
Which, I don't know, if you're familiar with scheduling medical procedures.
Yeah, that is not
how things go.
No.
So that felt like, oh, this is serious again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I made some arrangements for work so that I could be gone that afternoon. We drove to get the MRI and she went back to get it done. And it took a lot longer than I guess I expected.
Okay.
I think they did it with contrast and without contrast or whatever.
Okay.
But I remember the waiting room was like I felt the, like when we were working on getting Sarah diagnosed and there were some scans as part of that, like that feeling of being in the waiting room of like not knowing what's happening.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a great feeling.
Yeah.
Being there again. And just the uncertainty of what was happening.
Right. Was the MRI to try to get more information about what the mass was?
Yes.
Or was it to see if it had spread or what?
I mean, presumably if it would have picked up anything spreading, they would have done that. But it was primarily to get more information about this mass.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that, and my mind was jumping ahead to like, okay, if this is cancer, like what is our life going to look like? And interestingly, my one place I went was like, okay, what am I going to pack in my bag for these like medical things that we're going to be facing, which I think was an interesting, perspective that I think, had this been my first foray into like a potential caregiving situation, I don't know that that's where my mind would have jumped.
Do you mean literal bag? Like,
I was like, I have this bag.
Yeah.
And like, what am I going to put in there for if, because in this period, after this phone call, we're like, well, clearly she's going to need surgery because that can't stay. You can't leave something like that. And so like surgery is coming up at the minimum.
Yeah. So
I'm thinking like hospital stay. And then if it's like more than that, if there's going to be treatments or anything after that, like we're going to be in and out of places. And like, so I was thinking like, for me, what's going to be helpful for me to have for those things, which probably talking about things so much on this podcast had something to do with that.
Interesting. So you think that like both before you wouldn't have thought about the logistics of that, but also it's interesting that you thought about yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That you were like, what's going to be in my bag? Which I feel, I don't know, proud is maybe the weird word, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm glad that you in that moment were like, okay, this is going to be hard. What can I do for myself to get me through this? You know, like, yeah. Cool. Yeah.
So we get done with that. I think we got home at like 3:00. 5:00, we get a call again from her provider. So the results were back.
Oh, fast.
Which like clearly they're fast tracking.
Yeah.
This thing, because if you've waited for like scan results before, that is not the speed of things typically.
Yeah.
And she seems very positive. The results came back very, as far as having a mass that large can go.
Sure.
It appeared to be a cyst, which most likely means it is not cancerous.
Good.
And so that was good news.
Yeah.
And that was a big relief. But I remember after that call, commenting to Sarah, this is going to be a 24-hour period that we remember. Like, this is one of those days that is going to you'll always remember this day.
Yes.
Yeah. So the next step was waiting for the call to schedule with the University of Washington.
Okay.
And that was kind of the next waiting thing. And I also want to jump in here a minute. Like I'm talking about Sarah's health, and I talked to her prior to this about me sharing this, and she's given me, permission to talk about this. And so I just want to mention that here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we get the call to get things scheduled with the University of Washington, and that was going to be, it ended up being 2 weeks after we found out about the initial mass. So we had a week or so there where there wasn't much going on, and we were just kind of like speculating what's going to happen. And it felt weird because the appointment was with an oncologist, and one that just felt like this is not a world that we have been in.
Yeah.
And so that felt strange.
Right.
On the other hand, it felt strange that like, okay, this is, I guess because it still could be cancer, that's who we're seeing, I guess.
So it wasn't sure yet. It was sort of like,
it was still like most likely not, but there's still a possibility.
Sure.
Slim, but a possibility.
Yeah. Because just even that word oncology can like strike fear, right?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. So we're just kind of like waiting around, kind of speculating like what's going to happen, like assuming that there's going to be surgery, and but not knowing, like, now that it's most likely not cancerous, like what is this going to be something where the priority is much lower, and so it's going to be a while before that happens. And Sarah's very much like, I want this thing out, like let's just do it.
Yeah.
Just kind of like to the point, matter of fact, like that's just she just wants it done. She's clearly.
Yeah.
So we kind of were in that waiting period for a while, and it was a short wait, but the wait for the MRI results and the waiting to get the MRI done, and it's just been just a small glimpse at what life is like for you and Sean and many other people that are in the cancer side of their health and caregiving. And we didn't experience like a positive test result. We didn't experience treatment. And so like, even like, so clearly, we don't have that full experience, but just this glimpse of this, like it could be cancer, this waiting period, this like, it's terrible.
It's terrible. It's true.
Yeah.
It's so terrible.
It really is.
Yeah. And the piece about, I think a thing that is wild about cancer and all of this waiting is like, it's like you're waiting for somebody else to tell you what's happening in your own body. Right. So I would imagine that a lot of the other stuff that has happened with Sarah in the past, it's her reporting the symptoms. Like she's the one going to an appointment and saying, I feel this when I stand up.
Yes.
My head hurt. Right. But in cancer, it's like she didn't know this thing was inside of her. Like a person had to call and say, this is happening.
Right.
This is happening in your body. You had to wait for the results of a scan to have a picture to tell you, have a human tell you what the picture said, what was in her body. You know what I mean? And that is just always like, blows my mind. And it's so, I don't even know the adjective, but I'm sorry that you had to experience it because like you said, it's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful. The waiting and the waiting and the waiting and the wondering and the speculating. You know, like you were already like down the road packing your bag for things, you know, and it's like you can't help but do that sometimes.
Right.
You know? Yeah. Yeah. So you were waiting for the UW appointment and it was with an oncologist.
Yep.
And has that happened yet?
Yes. So that was, I don't know, I think last Monday. It's hard to keep track.
Yeah.
So it was 2 weeks after the initial call that kind of kicked this whole thing off. So it's about 2 hours away.
Yeah.
And her appointment's at 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Rush hour is a thing.
Yeah.
Going down the interstate, going into Seattle. So we left at 5 a.m. to just make sure that there's zero stress.
Sure.
Around if we get stuck in traffic, we have plenty of time.
So much time. Yeah.
Because I can't imagine. I mean, I probably can't imagine.
Yeah.
But as far as imagining a stressful situation, that is a stressful situation. Because that's not an appointment we want to be late for.
Well, I imagine even for Sarah, like a 2-hour car ride.
Right.
And both back and forth in one day is a lot.
Yeah.
And at 5 a.m., I'm guessing she's not a 5 a.m. girl.
No.
Right. And that's not even talking about the appointment yet.
Yeah.
So I just imagine the toll that all of that would be taking on her too. Plus you, of course.
Right.
But I just think that those components must have been really hard. Okay. So you left at 5 a.m.
We made great time and got there at 7 a.m., 2 hours before our appointment.
Better safe than sorry.
Exactly. So I took a nap in the car for an hour.
Nice.
And I think Sarah slept some too. I don't think she slept as much as I did. But and then she's kind of like, I'm getting claustrophobic. We just have to get out of the car.
Yeah.
So we kind of made our way into the hospital and figured out where we had to go and, you know, browsed the gift shop for a little bit.
Yeah.
And then got up to her appointment, I think like 30 minutes before, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it was very strange walking into a oncology clinic. That was a real, again, like, you know, sobering moment about the severity of this or the potential severity of what could be happening.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we go back, they take us back, we meet with the first doctor, and she's, you know, yes, we have to take this mass out, which is what we wanted, clearly. But also through this process and the scans and all of that, they kind of picked up on some things that indicate that Sarah has there is an elevated risk for some cancers.
Okay.
Which I don't know exactly how elevated, but there is an elevated risk.
Sure.
So while they're in there, they want to do a hysterectomy as well, which is something that was not on our radar at all.
Okay.
We were thinking like maybe she'll lose the ovary that this mass is attached to.
Sure.
But we were not thinking of additional organs being removed.
Right.
And so that was kind of like out of left field. And Sarah was very much like that. Yeah, I don't need it.
Right. Right.
Let's just do that.
Yeah.
And not to say that that's an easy thing to decide to do. But it also, like, they were very much, it was very clear that they had read her chart. And I know you talk about this, and this is not something that we've again, like, encountered, like seeing new doctors where it's like clear or not clear that they've done their research.
Yeah.
Like she referred to when Sarah was receiving IV fluids and was like asking if she was still doing that.
Yeah.
Sarah mentioned something about how she, you know, had spent those 3.5 years bedbound. Yeah. And the doctor was like, yeah, I remember reading about that.
Yeah. Good.
Which felt great. It felt so good because, with Sarah's ME, that's another piece of this is I'm concerned about running these scenarios of how big of a crash is going through surgery.
Yes.
And the recovery process going to cause for her, for the other stuff that's going on with her.
Right.
So just knowing that they're also aware of those things felt good.
Was there a piece, and obviously you don't have to answer any of these questions, and because I know you've been candid on here about talking about the grief around not having children, right? And so, I mean, that was a decision that you had previously made, right? But, a hysterectomy like really finalizes that, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
Was there any, did that come up as any of the grief around this, around like, okay, well, now it's really official. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I can't speak for Sarah on that.
Sure.
For me, it felt like that is, at least so far, has been something where we have crossed that bridge.
Yeah.
We have grieved that. And not to say that the grief is not coming back, that grief resurfaces. But it didn't feel like it wasn't like it was ripping a wound open, at least for me.
Okay.
Which I'm, I guess, grateful that I think had this been 10 years ago,
sure,
maybe that would have felt different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we finished, we talked to the doctor. There was another doctor we talked to, and then they took us to like a consult room, like a little conference room, which, and kind of went over, Sarah's signing paperwork for, surgery. And then a nurse comes in and spends, a good 30 plus minutes going through, this is what, your days leading up to surgery, you got to do, this is what the stay is going to be like. And, we're talking about a 1 to 2 night stay in the hospital following the surgery.
In Seattle.
Seattle. Right.
Okay.
Which is, something that I know. And I talked about it on here a while ago, but during COVID, she had to stay in the hospital.
Right. In the ER.
Right? And then got admitted. And I wasn't able to be part of that because of COVID.
Right.
So, she's had a hospital stay somewhat recently, but not for like a surgery.
Sure.
And I haven't had the experience of being with her in the hospital for a hospital stay.
Yeah.
So that's new territory. So it's just very kind of surreal.
Yeah.
Hearing all of this, like taking in all this information and like recovery stuff.
Yeah.
And, we got a packet of information to take home. And we left the appointment, and it was a combination of feeling good that there was a plan, feeling, I don't know, maybe not good, but feeling some resolution, some direction, some like, okay, there's a plan. Cause that was a really hard part of the waiting period leading up to this appointment, is like, we don't know what the plan is going to be. Like what's going to happen.
Yep.
And so that's what I wanted that appointment to be, is just like, okay, what's going on? What is our plan? What is the next actions going to be?
Yep.
So it feels like this thing can keep moving.
Yeah. I imagine there's a lot of cancer caregivers listening right now who are nodding because that is a huge, like I remember I wrote something early on called like In Between a Diagnosis and a Plan.
Yeah. We did an episode on that.
Oh, maybe that's why the title sounds familiar. Yeah, exactly. But I think that is like this terrible purgatory. It's one thing when we know something, like when we have a plan and we're like, okay, it's going to be terrible, but this is what's going to happen. But when you don't know, like your brain is just kind of goes wild. Like, I don't even know how to prepare. Right.
And it feels like you have to put your life on hold because you don't know what the next weeks, months are going to look like.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. 100%.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, I think at one point you had said to me during this time, you were feeling untethered.
Yeah.
And I keep thinking about that word because I'm like, oh, that's such a good word. It describes it so well. Yes. So I just want to acknowledge that like, that's a really common feeling that I bet a lot of people listening are like, that once you have a plan, whether it's a plan you like, right? I mean, a plan doesn't mean pleasantness, but at least it's like, okay, like we have our marching orders, we know what we're going to do. Whereas when you don't, it's sort of like, you can't even like you said, like you had probably run all these scenarios in your brain, but you hadn't run the like hysterectomy scenario. Right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So anyway, just wanted to say that that's probably very, very common for a lot of our listeners.
Yeah.
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 So I just imagine the two of you, like you got up at whatever time to get in the car at 5 o'clock. You drove for 2 hours. You sat in the parking lot. You had these huge appointments. You got this news, and now you have to drive back home.
Yeah.
I mean, did even just that? I mean, how did that day affect her physically?
Right. Yeah. I just want to jump back to the appointment in a minute,
please, sorry.
but then I'll certainly talk about that. I want to mention that the doctors at the University of Washington were very optimistic in like, this is just a cyst. This is the chance that this is cancer is extremely low.
Good.
Obviously, when we take it out, we're going to do pathology on it.
Great. Yep.
That's another word that's feels heavy to hear.
Yeah.
Like surgery and pathology.
Yeah.
And so, but when we're in the consult room and they're going over, this is what we're going to be doing. And then they go through, if it turns out that there is cancer, then we're probably also going to take out this and we're going to check these. And like, it puts a scenario in your brain.
Sure.
And it just underscores the, I guess, severity of the situation and the possibilities that are out there.
Yeah.
And we feel, I think we are riding on the optimism of her medical team.
Yep.
As far as what we're anticipating this being.
Yep.
Which I think is okay. And we'll see what comes out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is it, will they do like pathology in the middle of the surgery so they know what's going on?
Our understanding. Yeah.
Okay. And then if it's like negative, they'll take path A. And if it's positive, they'll take path B kind of thing.
Yes, exactly.
So that adds to on a teeny tiny scale, like that's what I have tomorrow happening as well. Right. Mm-hmm. And so that just adds to the whole like surgery path of like, it's not just like, oh, they're going to go in and XYZ. Mm-hmm. It's this like choose your own adventure where you don't exactly know.
Right. Like I mean, we have a pretty, everyone seems pretty confident that it's going to be path A, but there is not the door to path B is not sealed off and locked. And, that's not, there is still a chance there. So that's something to still sit with.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you were asking about the physical toll of just this day.
Yeah.
It was a lot. Yeah. I was, thinking back to while we were leading up to this trek and during it, like the last time, we've driven to Spokane a couple times to visit our friends there, which that's like a 6-hour drive. So that's a long drive.
Yeah.
But the last time we went to Seattle was for another doctor's appointment when we were trying to get her, all the things going on with her figured out. We went to see a specialist, and like that experience, it was 3 months before she could leave the house again. Right. So thankfully we are in a much better place today than then. Mm-hmm. She is overall doing a lot better to where there hasn't been a significant like crash at this point to where, she is doing today. She's the same roughly as she was before the appointment. Okay. But certainly we got home from that appointment and we both just crashed and like slept the rest of the afternoon. Cause one, just waking up that early, two, all that information, just, we were exhausted.
I'm sure. In every way, I'm sure.
In all the ways.
Yeah. So when will surgery be?
So surgery is going to be on May 28th. So that's the next piece is we didn't leave there with a surgery date. They hadn't scheduled that. We knew it was going to be on a Tuesday.
Okay.
Because that's the day that doctor does surgery, we were told.
Yeah.
But we didn't know which Tuesday, and we were there on a Monday. So obviously it wasn't going to be the next day. And like it could be the next Tuesday, which felt soon to like prepare. Yep. Because, we got to prepare for a potentially multi-day hospital stay. And, I'll be there staying with her. And, what do we need to bring? And what do we need to take care of so that like Mosey is okay? Because Mosey and Sarah are attached at the hip. Yeah. And, Sarah's parents are going to take care of Mosey and they'll do great and they'll keep her alive, which is what they need to do. But I think Mosey's going to be real sad.
Yeah.
And Sarah's real sad about, that whole piece.
Right.
So it just felt too soon to like be able to get everything wrapped up and sorted out. So we were hoping for the next one, because we also were like, because of this, are they going to put it off because doesn't seem as high risk or as like urgent as it did that first 24 hours. But the next morning we got a call, and it's going to, it's the 28th. So it was 2 weeks out, which felt kind of like the right amount of time.
Good.
It felt like enough time to prepare.
Yep.
And we're moving forward.
Yep.
We're not slowing down.
Yep.
We're going to get this taken care of.
Yep.
So, and it's roughly a 6-week recovery until she's 100% back to normal. I think my big concern at this point is, what going through surgery and the recovery process is going to do as far as a crash with her ME. And also just getting ready to take on a increased caregiving role, because for a while there hasn't been a lot that I've had to do there. I mean, she's been doing so much better than she was 3-4 years ago. Like, incredible. And so, I don't want her to be in a place where she needs more care. I know it's going to be, that's more for me to take on, and that impacts me. And just kind of like, it would be a lot for anyone going through surgery like this. So we'll see how all of that shakes out.
I'm so sorry for it.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, and there's some things like, I just wish that, and it's like, oh, like you said, oh, now I understand this part of you better. Like, I wish you didn't. I wish you never had to understand some of these things that I and others go through. And I just wish that, I mean, do you have any moments of like, really?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, she already had enough.
Right.
You already had enough. Like, I just wish there should be this like free pass card.
Yeah. Right.
Like, she's gone through enough. You've gone through enough.
Why
you don't need another thing.
Yeah.
I know that's not how it works, but I mean, has your brain gone there at all? Like, really?
I think a little bit. I don't know that it's been a lot of time there, and maybe it will. I mean, it wasn't until like this past, I think like Thursday, which would have been like, I guess the appointment would have been that Monday. Like, I woke up that morning and I was exhausted, like in every way.
Yeah.
And it was like all of these previous weeks had caught up to me.
Yes.
And there was kind of like adrenaline that I was running on, and kind of like logistics of like scheduling and waiting. And I don't know, but like that's the day it hit, and I was just dragging. It was a day. And I think I'm still kind of pulling myself out of that that day, because it's felt like now we're at a point where like we're finally processing these weeks, and it's real. Yeah.
And then is there any obviously you are so grateful, it sounds like, that it's that the pathology is good, you know what I mean, and it's still a really big surgery. Right. And so is there this sort of like, well, it's not cancer, but you know what I mean? Like, but are you still, I hope you're still able to hold like this, I don't want to say severity to make it sound scary, but like, this is still a really big deal for both of you.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. But there's also this like this imposter syndrome, even a little bit, that like we dipped our toe in like something that's in the whole cancer world.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like we can really claim that like that's part of our story.
Right.
And yet, but like the surgery is still a big deal.
Yes.
And that's kind of just been an interesting thing to kind of roll around in the brain.
That's what I wondered, and I didn't wonder because I think you should have imposter syndrome, but just it's sort of like me and tomorrow, right? That it's like, well, it's only the same day surgery. Do you know what I mean? Like, who cares?
Yeah,
it's surgery, you know? And so I think that we tend to like rank, and especially you and I are around a lot of people who are caregivers who are dealing with really big things, right? So it's like, well, mine's not as big as that, or it could have been worse. And your brain went to like the worst. And now that it's not that, we can feel like we need to minimize. And I just want to say that, like, 1,000% grateful and glad that the news is as good as it is. And it's still a really big deal and completely unexpected, and something that, you know, is going to be a lot for both of you. And so I just want to like give you the permission to feel those feels and to be like, yeah, I'm exhausted. And, you know, because it's still a really big deal.
Yeah.
A huge deal. And yes. So even though, like you said, we dipped our toe in, like, we're so glad that it was only your toe. Right.
Yeah.
And it's still a big deal. It would be a big deal for anyone. But I think especially for Sarah, because she's already, you know, like her body's going to go into it in a, you know, a different state than maybe other bodies are. So yeah.
One thing that I noticed, particularly during this appointment in Seattle, is, you know, Sarah is in a place now where she was primarily doing the communicating during the appointment. There was very little that I had to like jump in and, or like that she had to refer to me on, you know, something, which, you know, the last time we were doing these, what felt like big appointments and trying to figure things out, like, it was all on me.
Yeah.
Like, I was that conduit, and that was felt like a huge responsibility and a lot of pressure, and how grateful I feel that she is in a place where she can do that for herself.
Yeah.
Because that's one, you're going to get better information that way. And it's just like a show of how far she's come.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. So how do you, you've got what, like a week and a little bit before the surgery. So what are you sort of thinking, feeling, doing in these days?
Yeah, I felt very, like, right after that, I was like, we got a plan. We have to like get our packing lists in order. We have to like take a calendar and map out, like, you know, starting this day, this has to happen leading up to the surgery, those kind of things. And like, so that it's laid out on paper, and somehow that helps, you know, because the information is kind of scattered in some of these handouts, but like, let's get it in one place. And so Sarah was like, okay, we can do that. And I, you know, it's one of those things where I don't know if it's my anxiety or something. It makes it feel like, okay, this is going to be like a huge process for us to like map this out. I think it took 30 minutes.
Right.
But it felt good to have that done. And I think I also thought, that there was going to be a lot more planning and preparation that we needed to do.
Right.
But there's not.
Right.
I mean, we'd have to pack some things to keep us from getting bored sitting around in a hospital room for a day and a half. But not a lot beyond that.
Right.
And so it's, again, I mean, we haven't physically packed yet, but I think we've both kind of got a list of what we need to take.
Yep.
And we're kind of back to waiting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And trying, I don't know. We're waiting for something that we know for the most part now, which feels different.
Yeah.
It does, the ambiguity, the untetheredness isn't there.
Yeah.
There is the glad that this is happening as soon as it is, that we can get some resolution on this, that we can get this mass out of her, this large, large mass. But also the knowing that it's going to be a hard month, 2 months, maybe, you know, whatever it's going to be. We're about to enter into a harder period. Yeah. Which, I think we both feel the impact of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So with you, with like knowing you're going to be there for a couple of days and then this big recovery, like, what are you thinking about work?
Yeah. So work has been an interesting piece through all of this. Like, just to jump back, like the day after we got the initial call, like, I worked. And I think that for me, that was a distraction.
Yep.
And that was helpful.
Yeah.
I can't say that I wasn't like my mind wasn't also jumping to,
Sure.
what is happening in our lives right now, but it was good to have a distraction.
Yeah.
So that was helpful. And I've kept, I've worked throughout all of this. I've, certainly had to be out for some of these appointments, and, I'm going to be out most of that week when we're going down for surgery. I'm working from home these days right now.
Yep.
So the plan is, I'm going to keep working while she's recovering, and we'll kind of see how it goes.
Okay.
If it turns out that she needs me more than that's going to prevent me from putting in my 8 hours every day, we'll work around that.
Yeah.
And, figure out how to make that work. But, work has been good in, allowing me to have some flexibility.
Nice.
Which has been great. That hasn't felt like an additional stressor on this, which I'm grateful for.
Good.
Which I know isn't the case for a lot of people.
Yeah,
I imagine there are people where that would be a very stressful piece, either from like their job is not flexible or whatever reason. But we're feeling okay about that.
Good. Are there any systems of support that you're setting up for yourself? I know you're packing bags, but anything that you're doing so that others can be helping you as well?
Not that we've consciously done. I mean, I think we've been letting friends and family know what's happening.
Yeah.
Just so that, you can't get any support if people don't know what's going on.
It's true. Yep.
So we've been doing that, which I don't think is nothing. And we'll see I think we'll see how things go as the recovery proceeds, and kind of, what the needs are.
So one thing I will just share from my too much experience is that I think that often we think like, oh yeah, we'll see how it goes. Right.
Yeah.
And anything that people can like preemptively do, like let's pretend everything goes so perfectly and you come home and you're both like, we feel great. You're still going to be tired, and it would still be nice for someone to bring you dinner.
Right.
But I think that too often we wait until like we are like burnt to a crisp, and then we're like, maybe I should ask for some help. Right.
Right.
And so I think for you, I'm just going to nudge you just to think about, you've got local friends and family, but also with things like, I'm going to put in a plug for the Care app.
Right.
Like if you put on there, like, we need dinner on Tuesday night, I could send you dinner.
Right.
Through DoorDash. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and other, not local people could help in that way. And so, and I could send you groceries, like if you put together a list kind of thing. And so I just want you to think like preemptively, remember that like delegating is a form of self-care piece. Right. And so that building in support beforehand, before like not waiting to see how hard it is, just to be like, it'll just be a bonus.
Yeah. Right.
So if at the end of that day, you don't have to cook dinner and you feel great, go see a bird, like.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna, I don't know. How does that, I didn't mean to get preachy there with you for a second.
No, I think that's a good perspective to have, because we're going to have a lot going on during the recovery period, and anything we can do in this week where it doesn't feel like there's a lot for us to do.
Yep.
That would be probably a good investment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I, as you know, love Care, and I think it's perfect for something like this. Obviously there's other options out there as well, but like, I think that then you can like update people on there, but then you can also like say, well, hey, we need groceries, we need meals. And, I don't know if you trust anyone else to like walk Mosey or anything like that, but but people can also then like send you gift cards. I mean, I just like people, this is a moment, and it'll be interesting later. Maybe we can process like what this feels like for you, because unfortunately, people rally around things like cancer, right? They understand cancer, they understand surgery, they understand hysterectomies. Whereas like ME, they're like, right? So in your previous life, before this big demarcation, people were probably less likely to be like, I'm going to bring you a casserole, right? Because it wasn't as sort of like clear cut. And this is a moment where people are going to be like, oh, there's a surgery day, and there's a thing, and there's a recovery period. And so to like rally, to like harness the energy of people who are like, there's a thing, I want to help.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is a moment. So anyway, I think later it would be interesting to like process with you, like just to see like how people are responding to like this versus the other stuff that she's gone through. And if there's ever any like frustration of like, hello, we've been having hard times for years. Where you been? You know what I mean? So anyway, I'll jump off my delegation support soapbox, but
okay,
you should still do it.
All right.
I really appreciate that you shared all of that with me, with us here. I'm sorry that in addition to everything that you've already gone through, that there is more. And I'm sorry that whether it's a toe or however much of you has had to be dipped into this oncology world, that you are here. And I'm glad that you have a plan and there's things in place and people to support. But I just wish you could have stayed on your streak of like, boring. Am I even a caregiver? Is this even I'm not even, like, I don't have to ask that question anymore, do you?
No.
But just know that obviously I am here.
Okay. Yeah.
The whole way. And you got listeners who I'm sure would probably send you a casserole if they could too. Right. But certainly you've got me. And so I'll help you get through it any way I can.
All right.
Yeah. All right. We'll be thinking of you. I think that the day that the day this will release will be surgery day.
Yeah,
right?
It will.
So I'll be thinking of you and just reach out anytime.
Will do.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, friend.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to In Sickness. Find us online at insickness.care or on Instagram at insicknesspodcast. You can send your questions and comments to insicknesspodcast@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend or fellow caregiver, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening, and take care.